This is a fan-generated show. If you'd like to support us, please go to jamieglazoff.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our new Rumble channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm thrilled to announce the release of my new book, Obama's True Legacy: How He Transformed America. There's a reason why Mike Huckabee calls it a ferocious and chilling read. Order it now at Amazon.com or at FrontPageMag.com. Good evening. Welcome to the Glazoff Gang. Tonight, another fantastic program with another fantastic guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please remember, we're a fan-generated program. We're only here because of you. We're still experiencing a lot of shadow banning. The deep state is after us as always. Please subscribe to our YouTube and Rumble channels. Press instant notifications. Visit JamieGlazoff.com, subscribe to our newsletter, and perhaps more importantly, if you have some extra finances, support us to help us keep going. Follow us at Jamie Glazoff on Twitter and Facebook, but most importantly, liveuptofreedom.com is the website of the one and only, the great Annie Cyrus, that's fighting on the front lines for liberty and freedom throughout the world. Please support Annie. What an honor and privilege to have with us this evening James DiEugenio, one of the leading Kennedy assassination theorists on the planet. He is the co-author of the new book, The JFK Assassination Chokeholds, that inescapably proved there was a conspiracy. James, to whom do I owe this honor?
Well, I want to get more people interested in my book. Okay. I think it's a pretty good book.
It's a fascinating book, James, but I can also call you Jim, I think, if that's okay. Jim, fascinating book. I've been reading it the last couple weeks. I just want to personally thank you. I've been preoccupied and obsessed with this since I was 13 or 14 years old. It's very close to my heart. And you're just solidifying and just crystallizing so much of the truth. Now, before we get to some of the things that we need to talk about, I just want to talk about you here for a moment. You're the author of several books on this. Your books are a companion piece to Oliver Stone's two recent documentaries. You wrote the script, the script for those two documentaries, if I'm not mistaken. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and all this great work that you've done.
Well, in total, I have 5 books out there. Okay. And they were Destiny Betrayed, the JFK Assassination, The Evidence Today. I was a co-editor of a book called The Assassinations, which is about all 4 major assassinations of the 60s. JFK, Malcolm, MLK, and RFK. JFK Revisited is really the scripts for the 2 documentaries that Oliver Stone put out, I think in 2021, which is JFK Revisited, which is a 2-hour version, and JFK Destiny Betrayed, which is the 4-hour version. And this most recent one, which I'm a contributor to, is the JFK Assassination Chokeholds. Okay. And what we did in that, and my co-authors, I had 4 co-authors on this, we tried to pick the 9 or 10 most compelling pieces of evidence, which are supplemented by the new evidence that came out through the Assassinations Record Review Board. And we picked these because we didn't think there would be any benign explanation about these areas of evidence. You couldn't explain it away in any kind of innocent manner. Okay. And that's why they're called chokeholds. All right. Because, we decided on these, we put our heads together literally. Okay. What are the 10 areas which you can't dismiss no matter how hard you try? All right. And we also, this is, I think, the first book to go into the lawsuit that is being prosecuted. Well, a lot of it's been decided already about why the government will not give us the last of the Kennedy documents. All right. because there's still 3,600 documents that are either redacted in part or completely denied. That 61 years later, I think it's time enough that you can put you can dispose of these at last to the American public. Uh, and we had a couple of attorneys on our team who were involved with that case, and they talked about it in the book. Finally, Andrew Eiler, an attorney from Canada, did a very good job of explaining why, with neither the Warren Commission nor the House Select Committee on Assassinations, why there was no standard of proof in either one of those legal proceedings. I'm sure you're aware in the law, there's three standards of proof. There's what we call by the preponderance of the evidence, which is what you have to accomplish for a civil case. Okay. There's a clear and compelling standard, which is for administrative law. And finally, for any felony, it's called beyond a reasonable doubt. It used to be to a moral certainty. Today, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. Well, Andrew studied the origins of these standards, and then he applied them to the Warren Commission and the House Select Committee. And he came to the conclusion that they didn't apply any of these to, to their investigations. So, how can you convict a man of murder when you can't even meet the lowest standard of proof, let alone the highest? And I'm pretty sure that's the only book that actually delves into this. One last point about that. In researching this, Andrew found out that the beyond a reasonable doubt to a moral certainty standard, that was devised not so much to protect the defendant, but to protect the community from the collective guilt that they would have convicted and sentenced a man to death who had not committed the crime. Now, does anything ring more true in the Oswald case than that? Okay. That's why we've had this tremendous doubt and uncertainty about the Kennedy case since 1963. Okay. The public has been haunted by this, for 61 years. And that's why it won't go away.
Thank you, Jim. Well, supposed to be released with Trump, then Pompeo, who I think we can agree is some kind of deep stater. He's begging Trump not to release them. Roger Stone, has commented on quite a bit of this. And he said that Trump said to him, some of what I saw in there was just absolutely horrible. So that makes us think. So then now Biden is kicking the can down the street again, if that's a term we can use. But
what Biden did is even worse than what Trump did.
it's illegal. It's actually illegal. Yeah.
Actually, you're correct on that. I believe what Biden did is actually illegal. It breaks both the spirit of the law and the technical part of the law. Okay. It's not just a matter of going against the spirit of the law. He has actually broken the law. All right. What he did, and so your viewers will understand this, what Trump did was delay the process. Okay. For first 6 months, then 3 years. Biden then came in and he literally altered the law. See, the JFK Act passed in 1992 has a prejudice, a bias in it towards declassification. And the longer it goes on, the stronger that bias is supposed to be. And in fact, the review board, should I explain what that is? Do you listeners, viewers know what that is? Should I explain that?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. See, the review board made a series of what they called final determinations for every single document they had. And what we found out is that every single document, well, let me change that. Nearly all the documents had a final determination of like 2006 to something like 2009. All right. So, in other words, what Biden is doing is actually breaking what the review board actually deemed was good and proper and justified on their part. Okay. Now, I really hope that Bobby Kennedy, who I'm sure you're aware of, wants to put his, I think it's his daughter-in-law. This story just came out a couple days ago. A deputy director of the CIA, so she can go ahead and make sure the very last of these documents are declassified because he sincerely believes that the CIA killed his uncle. Well, a lot of people think that. Okay, and so if he can use this final determination notice to convince Trump to go ahead and declassify the last of the documents, and we'll finally see after 61 years what was so secret about what was in those Kennedy assassination classifications.
Well, thank you, Jim. And as you document in all your work and in this new book, CIA's never cooperated, to say the least. So, look, this takes about maybe 12 hours just even to start a good conversation. So
you,
tonight,
you don't plan on holding me till 6 o'clock in the morning, do you?
I know. And so I'm very torn and I agonize before an interview like this because I just think, Jamie, what can I possibly just talk about? So I just want to talk about a few moments in time, okay? So let's just start with Oswald and some of the things that you guys crystallize and you crystallize with these chokeholds. And I love that expression. Just in terms of a chokehold, it's undisputable. There's nothing else that can be said, and I love that you guys have done that. So apparently, Warren Commission and CIA and all what the official version is, lone nut assassin. Okay, so empirical evidence, intelligence connected individual. So there's even some of the recent documents that have come out that Roger Stone has talked about. A 1099 has showed up from the FBI to Oswald. Very interesting. So informant working for the FBI to some degree. He attended some kind of CIA school to learn the Russian language. Very interesting. Now, a lot of evidence, as your book shows, fake defector. So even when he comes back, and you've talked about Betsy Wolfe, the file that's supposed to be on a defector, the CIA doesn't treat him like they would a standard defective. I think it's the 201 file. Betsy Wolfe has talked about this. So right off the get-go right there, something's not right, right?
I think that's one of the most interesting parts of the book. This is the first book that has the discoveries of Betsy Wolfe for the House Select Committee on Assassinations. And the reason it is because they were not declassified till 2006. And I was lucky enough to know a guy who was going through the files at NARA, okay, the archives. And he said, Jim, are you familiar with this? What Betsy Wolfe did with the Oswald file? I go, I never even heard of Betsy Wolfe. Okay, he goes, I'm going to send it to you then. She was the person in charge of the CIA Oswald file for the House Select Committee on Assassinations. She asked for every charter in the CIA before she began her work. She went through all of them. I think there's 9 divisions. And then from that, she outlined on a graph, okay, well, this is what Oswald's file should do then. All right, so then she asked for the file. And guess what? It didn't do anything like that. Okay. So then she determined that it should have gone to something called the SR division, Soviet Russia. It didn't do that. It went to some place called OS, the Office of Security. All right. And so the Office of Security does not open 201 files. That is the most common file in the whole CIA. Okay. any person who does anything of interest will have a 201 file. Now, I believe if you defect to the Soviet Union and you offer them radar secrets, I think you'd be a person of interest, wouldn't you? Okay. And so there wasn't one opened on Oswald for 13 months. So she's very, very puzzled. So she calls in guy after guy after guy at the CIA and she asks them, how did this? And they all agree with her. You're right. It should have gone to the SR division, number one, and there should have been a 201 file open. So two or three people all agree with her who had worked for the CIA. Finally, in late 1978, when the House Select Committee is about to close down, she calls in this guy named Robert Gambino. And Robert Gambino was in charge of the Office of Security at that time. That's why she wanted to talk to him. He goes, look, it doesn't matter how many documents come in, and it doesn't matter if they're pre-stamped. Okay. If the client goes to the first gate, which is the Office of Mail Logistics, and he makes a request, they will go to that client and that client only. Now, I don't I don't have to tell you or anybody else listening to this show. This means that somebody was
Mm.
rigging Oswald's file
Mm.
as he went to the Soviet Union.
Yes.
How on earth could you do something like why would you do something like
Mm.
that? Okay, now here's the capper. Betsy Wolf's notes, to my knowledge, were never typed into memoranda form. They're all handwritten. So thank God she had good handwriting. Okay. And they're not in the HSCA volumes. Can you imagine that? I mean,
Mm.
can you imagine not putting something that important
Mm.
into the HSCA volumes?
Mhm.
Okay. So, anyway, that's one of the more interesting, well, it might be one of two, three, or four most interesting parts
Yeah.
of the book, that whole tale.
Absolutely, Jim. And look, so this is the Cold War. You've got a defector spending a couple years behind the Iron Curtain in the Soviet Union. Then he decides to come back. Wouldn't you think that the intelligence community would debrief him?
Well, according to the CIA, they never did. Okay.
So he just comes back and he just starts wandering around. It's absurd. It's absurd.
Who goes to the Soviet Union for a little bit over 2 years, about 2.5 years. Okay. And he offers to sell them, rather to give them radar secrets. And he had worked right at the base where the U-2 was at Sugi in Japan. Okay. So you would think that at the very least, the CIA would want to debrief him. You know, what did you tell the Russians? Did they try and recruit you? Why did they send you out of Moscow? Why did they send you to Minsk, 400 miles away? What happened when you, well, according to CIA, they did not debrief him. All right, which is unbelievable. I don't believe it. I will never believe it. And I think it's a lie. Okay, they had to debrief him somewhere.
Yeah, they're lying. They're lying. And okay, so this Oswald, we've also got him being impersonated, as you've documented, I think about 17 times. J. Edgar Hoover has admitted this, and he was being impersonated in New Orleans while he's in the Soviet Union.
Right, that's true. Okay, that article was written by a guy named Matt Crumpton, who's a lawyer from Columbus, Ohio. It's the best essay I've ever read on the impersonations of Lee Harvey Oswald. Even I did not think there were 17 of them. Okay, but there were, and it went all the way up to a couple days before the assassination of JFK. All right, that's what's so extraordinary about this. And as you said, also, his name was being used while he was in the Soviet Union. I mean, that is just amazing that somebody used his name when he was in the Soviet Union. All right. Now let me just name a couple of these, okay? Because we, like you said, we'd be here for 12 hours going through every one of them. There's one at Sylvia Odio's apartment in late September of 1963, where a couple of Cuban exiles knock on her door. They're trying to get money for an anti-Castro cause. The third guy is she identified as Oswald. She told them, no, I don't have access to any money for this. Her sister was there also, Annie Odio. All right. Now, that guy, the Cuban exile, calls her back a couple days later. And this is the really startling part of the story. He says, what did you think of Leon? And she said, I didn't think anything of him. Well, he says that we should have killed Kennedy after the Bay of Pigs. And he's kind of loco. Leon's kind of loco. Now, on the day of the assassination, like everybody else, she's watching television. Oswald's picture comes on the TV. She literally faints because it's him. Okay. Her sister has to take her to the hospital and they give her smelling salts. Okay. And her sister looks at her and she looks at her sister. It's him. That's the guy who was at our apartment. Okay. Except the Warren Commission says it's not him. You know why they say it's not him? Because Oswald was in Mexico City. Okay. Here's the problem with that. He made a total of 5 visits to the Russian embassy and the Cuban embassy. So there should be 10 pictures because the CIA had cameras in front of both entrances. Okay. So going in and coming out, there should be 10 pictures. In 61 years, the CIA has never been able to produce one picture, let alone 10, one picture of Oswald going in or coming out of either embassy. On the night of the assassination, the CIA sent a tape up to Dallas because the FBI was interviewing Oswald that night. And the CIA sends a tape up there, and this is his voice when he was in Mexico City. Except J. Edgar Hoover writes a memo, and he says, the agents in Dallas who have been interviewing Oswald have listened to this tape. This is not Oswald. Okay. So even though he was there and he made all these entrances and exits, the CIA has never been able to come up with either a tape recording or a picture of him. Here's the clincher. When the Warren Commission interviewed Sylvia Odio, the lawyer that they sent down to Dallas to take her deposition was a guy named Wesley Liebler. After they deposed her, Liebler offered to buy her dinner. Okay. And he said to her, even if we find any evidence of conspiracy, we've been told by Earl Warren to cover it up. She couldn't believe this. Okay. Here's the lawyer for the Warren Commission who's supposed to be deposing her. And he's telling her that the Warren Commission is a cover up. That story did not come out until Gaten Fonzie interviewed Sylvia Odio for the Church Committee in 1975. And when she said that, he was stunned, as I think anybody would be. Okay. And he said, Liebler said that? And she said, yes, he did. And I'll swear to it on a Bible. So this is what the Warren Commission comes down to. He can't be at her door because he's in Mexico City, but the CIA can't prove he's in Mexico City. So where is he? And that's
And
just a couple of them.
yeah, and the person that was sent to Mexico City posing as Oswald is not Oswald.
No. The best evidence we have of that is the woman at the Cuban embassy who said that he was short and blonde. Well, that's not Oswald.
Yeah.
Okay. That's who she remembered.
Jim, something that really is on my mind for years is when they arrested Oswald, he had asked to make a phone call. And his last phone call, they didn't let it go through. But the witnesses behind the scenes that know and saw everything, The phone call was made to an individual by the name of John Hurt, a former special agent for U.S. counterintelligence. Why would a lone nut assassin who's crazy and has nothing to do with intelligence be calling U.S. counterintelligence?
I'm really glad you brought this up because it's a very interesting story. On Saturday night, Oswald went ahead and made out a form requesting to make a phone call. All right. He passed the form to the secretary. The secretary had to get it cleared by the Secret Service. All right. The Secret Service denied the call, but the secretary then put that form in the trash basket. But the other secretary thought this was kind of interesting. So she picked it up out of the trash basket and then she showed it to an attorney where she lived. Okay. On the form was the phone number of John Hurt, who lived in North Carolina at that time. All right. John Hurt was a former military intelligence, counterintelligence officer. And about 300 miles away from where he was a place called Nag's Head, which was a base which ONI, the Office of Naval Intelligence, used to school and then launch military defectors into the Soviet Union. All right. Victor Marchetti used to work for the CIA, looked at this, and he said, you know, I think Oswald signed his own death warrant when he, when he requested to make that phone call. Because, of course, the next day, Jack Ruby comes in and shoots him. All right. So Marchetti might have been right about that. You know, the fact that he wanted to talk to this guy suggested that he wanted to know what they wanted him to say and what they wanted him to do, if they were going to supply him with a lawyer, okay, etc. That kind of thing. That's what Marchetti was talking about. I agree with that.
Jim, the 5444 Camp Street, all that Cuban activity. So we've got the pro-Castro office on this side, but there's an anti-Castro office on the other side. Just all that stuff that Oswald was involved in and being this Marxist pro-Castro guy handing out leaflets. It's very clear that he was not an anti-Castro guy, right?
Well, Oswald was supposed to be masquerading as a pro Castro guy.
Right.
Okay.
Sorry, I think did I misspeak? I meant that did I say it's very clear that he wasn't pro Castro?
Yes, I
Right.
agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay. And I see both the CIA and the FBI had anti Fair Play for Cuba Committee campaigns going on at this time. All right. And it's very hard to take a look at the 544 Camp Street address. All right. And not come to the and there was a number of witnesses who actually saw him there. All right. In fact, there were two INS agents who saw him go into that building. And that building housed Guy Bannister's offices in the summer of 1963. Guy Bannister was an extreme, I really don't think you can get much more extreme than this guy, was an extreme right winger who did all kinds of surveillance jobs on segregation, on communists, tried to track down every pro-Castro resident in New Orleans.
He wouldn't have a pro Castro organization working in that office.
Right. So you could snooker and find out what other pro-Castro people there were in New Orleans. Okay. Oswald slipped up, and on one of the flyers, he put down Bannister's address, 544 Camp Street. Okay. And this was Bannister was, to put it mildly, was very upset about this. Okay. We have this from his secretary who said he was angry about